Ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, on today's Saturday broadcast, we will start with a video from Harry J. Sisson and a great many other people who are going to have some retractions and corrections to do on the interwebs, which they shan't do, but instead shall double down and triple down and refuse to admit it. Behold, Harry.
The Charlie Kirk shooter is not trans. It's not an immigrant or a person of color or any of the premature labels that MAGA gave him before he was even arrested, before we even knew anything about him. But if you went to some of these MAGA influencer pages over the past 24 to 48 hours, you would have thought that they had them all figured out. You know, they were saying it's some blue-haired, crazy liberal who drives an electric vehicle everywhere or whatever crap that they were saying, but they had no idea, and we have no idea. To me, and I'm just speculating here, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, it looks like a case of radicalization. This looks like a young man who grew up in a Republican family in a conservative state, who had a lot of access to firearms, who found himself too deep in internet culture, going down those dark rabbit holes and becoming crazy and doing something tragic because of that insanity.
It's not tragic. It's something monstrous. Tragedy is like an unfortunate event. This is a deliberate, horrific act. Deliberate. But I love how he says like it's premature. And then he goes on to prematurely hypothesize as to what the motivation was, seemingly unaware of, I don't know what the evidence was at the time, Harry J. Sisson, who runs around the interwebs calling people Nazis, Hitler, threats to democracy. I don't know what evidence was available at the time if they had given the press conference and indicated that there was anti-fascist messaging engraved on the bullets. Yes, Harry, he was radicalized. Yes, Harry, when you're radicalized from a Republican, conservative Christian household, you're radicalized away from that which was a good place in the first place to the evil place. Well, we're now getting a little bit of information as to where this individual was allegedly potentially radicalized by. But what I love is, I mean, to say that Harry Sisson, I think he's confirmed that he gets paid. Maybe not anymore, since I don't know what Kamala Harris has left to pay anybody. You're dealing with people who, if I'm not mistaken, and if I am, I'll correct myself, is a known at some point in his life paid operative for the Democrat Party. Every single Democrat mouthpiece yesterday, in tandem, was running something of an iteration of this message. He was an immigrant. I don't know who ever said he was immigrant. He wasn't brown. I don't ever know so anybody who was talking about skin color. He wasn't transgender. Well, news has broken today about his transgender partner roommate and whether or not we're going to find out some details.
I don't know if this is left-wing or right-wing radicalization.
Well, it's not right-wing radicalization if he's starting from a Christian, conservative, Republican household. You get the idea. These idiots yesterday came out, not narrative control, narrative driving. Well, I do actually just have to show one of the montages that I put together yesterday saying they're in full narrative drive. And it was like the messaging wasn't verbatim, like other people who got nabbed spreading messaging in tandem. Let me just see where the thing that I said, there's a full narrative drive going on right now. And it was like they got the talking point. Here it is. Just live on the internet. The new memo's in. Look at this. This is from Melanie DiRaggio. Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin isn't a radical left trans Democrat. He's a wealthy, straight, white, registered Republican man. From Art Candy. MAGA repeatedly blamed immigrants. I don't know who blamed immigrants. Trans people and Democrats for Charlie Kirk's murder. Crickets when they found out that 22-year-old Tyler Robinson was a white Mormon. Maybe Art Candy didn't watch the press conference either. Harry Sisson. Clearly the shooter is not trans or an immigrant. Blake C. Carter. His family don't look trans or liberal to me. I mean, it may not be scripted. They might all just be idiots in tandem. But that's it. That was what I wanted. We'll start the show with this because we're going to get into some of Harry J. Sisson's, years of consistent, not fear-mongering, because fear-mongering is one thing, demonizing and vilification of people to the point where if someone's unhinged, they might hear his, calling someone Hitler, Nazis, threats to democracy. They might decide to do something, like say, hey, fascist, catch, which was engraved on one of the casings. You may remember Jose Vega. he was on the channel of, I think it was I don't know how long ago it was. He was running for office, so it couldn't have been a year, 2 year. Anyhow, he reached out to me after this incident, saying, you know, let's have a discussion, try to bridge the divide. And I hate to like poison the well before Jose comes in. I don't know actually if you say Jose or Jose, but
Sorry,
Jose. No, don't worry. Come on, get it. Do I say Jose or Jose?
it's Jose.
Okay. I don't. I mean, I was going to say when you're here, I don't want to poison the well, but I think by virtue of the fact that we're having this discussion as to whether or not we can have civil discourse after a man who was engaging in civil discourse was assassinated, I think we've answered the question by virtue of the fact that we're having this discussion right now. But I have nothing against you. I've always found you quite honest, sincere, and thoughtful. So it is unfortunate circumstances that we're going to have this discussion. First of all, Jose, tell people who may not know who you are.
Sure. Well, first of all, I hate Harry Sisson too. I think Harry Sisson was definitely paid by the DNC. He is terrible, and he was a Democrat mouthpiece, and I hated him, and I still do. But that doesn't mean I think he should be shot. I think you can still find ways to disagree with people without resorting to violence. Like, for example, you can call out the fact that he is clearly paid to have his opinions, and it's not coming from a sincere, genuine place. Without calling for violence. Now, that being said, my name is Jose Vega. I ran for Congress last year against Richie Torres as an independent candidate. And I'm doing it again. I didn't stop. And the reason I ran as an independent candidate here in the Bronx, I'm in New York City. This place is the poorest congressional district in the country, and I abhor the Democratic Party. That's also true for the Republican Party as well. I think that now is the time to step away from the two-party system. And just a quick background on me in 2016, I admitted yes, I voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020, not because I was, a big MAGA hat wearing conservative or anything like that, but because I actually supported Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. I was a quote unquote Bernie bro in 2015. And after Hillary Clinton, after it was exposed that Hillary Clinton conspired with the Democratic Party to get Bernie out, and Bernie Sanders didn't have the guts to stand up to her and denounce her for stealing the vote, I was just upset with the political establishment. And I thought, Trump is this outsider guy. Hey, why not? Let's throw some instability in. And then 2020, Joe Biden freaked me out because I thought, I thought that they would actually try to start a war with Russia, which, hey, they did through Ukraine, and now Ukraine is a proxy. So now here I am, and I'm running for Congress. I'm also known, by the way, for yelling at politicians, lots of them. You can name them: AOC, Nancy Pelosi. I called her a sad old drunk. That's my favorite one. Hakeem Jeffries. I've yelled at Republicans: Mike Pompeo, Matthew Pottinger. I've yelled at the New York Times, the Washington Post, Reuters at a big press conference they were doing at Columbia. This was immediately after Seymour Hersh had revealed that the United States played a role in bombing the Nord Stream pipeline. So people definitely have seen my videos that have gone viral. They just may not know that it was me who was in those videos doing that. So that's who I am. And I reached out to you because I think for example, Harry Sisson is doing exactly the thing you should not be doing right now, which is you're trying to make assumptions. And look, I think everybody kind of fell into this rabbit hole of trying to figure out if this guy was like a leftist, a right winger, even before we knew who the shooter was. And people, go on.
Well, no, there are very few examples where it's someone who's further right of the person that they assassinate. I can only think of Yitzhak Rabin, and whoever stabbed him was someone who was even further right than Yitzhak. You can operate, and I don't think it's much of a stretch. Anybody who would dare, anybody who would kill Charlie Kirk is not right of Charlie Kirk, period. So whether or not they're just an outright psychotic schizophrenic, that's where you can say hold off and wait for some evidence. Were they schizophrenic? Were they motivated by things? Where people jumped the gun was blaming Israel, which they'll still do because people are still going to say this is too perfect a wrap up, and he's a Lee Harvey Oswald type patsy. But it was fairly clear just from the act itself. You can make some presumptions, but then when you start getting press FBI reports that there were casings with anti-fascist messaging on it, the fact that he comes from a conservative Christian household is exactly where you come from when you've gotten radicalized to go to the other end of the spectrum. But hold on, before we even get there, where are your parents from?
Well, my parents are from El Salvador.
Okay.
My dad was he was a child soldier in the Salvadorian Civil War in the 1980s, and he came over here. He was a refugee, and my mom too. My dad served 2 years. He was forcefully captured by the state government, and they emigrated here in the 80s.
Hold on, I'm sorry. We won't spend a whole time on the childhood, but I don't know that fact from the last time I would have asked you these questions. How old was he when he was forced into child soldiers?
He was 14.
Shut up.
I still have my dad's. So after you serve 2 years, in those times they give you your card that lets you go, that lets you leave, and he's like 16 years old in it, and he looks like a very skinny version of me. And I can send that to you after the show. I actually sent that to Oliver Stone because he has that movie Salvador or El Salvador. Maybe you know it, or your viewers may know it, and that is what allowed Oliver Stone to respond to me, and then that's what let him. He came on then my platform so that I could interview him because he thought that it was, pretty cool that my dad, who was a child soldier, forced to be it, to go and fight against communists, not because my dad was political or anything. My dad was just caught at forces against his will. And then and then here I am standing up for the truth, that, hey, I think my government is accountable in war crimes. So.
Have you ever had an open discussion with your dad about that experience in detail?
My dad never talks to me about the time he was in the military. And the only times I've ever heard him recount it is with other people who were in it. So, I was young. I was I was like 9, 10, 11 years old, where he would be in the room with someone else who was also in that war. And then I would hear, his stories about having to go into a camp at night. And then, he thinks that they're in like a recon mission where they're slowly creeping up, and then suddenly he hears his friend just fall to the ground because the enemy camp already spotted them coming. And, my dad was shot in the leg. Those are the little bits that I know. And then I think maybe a couple years ago, I started looking into the Salvadorian Civil War myself. I had investigated, what role the State Department played in it. And I found pictures, like there were journalists in El Salvador taking pictures of commanders. And I was showing my dad these commanders, and my dad was like, "Oh yeah, I knew that guy. Yeah, that guy used to walk in the front lines, so to inspire us to go out and also fight, and so that we wouldn't be cowards and stuff." And yeah, so that's the extent that he's ever spoken to me about it.
You operate on the basis, I'm going to ask it, that your father had killed people in his time.
I don't know. I mean, I would think he probably did. I mean, I assume my dad, for 2 years in seeing heavy combat like that. I mean,
it would be, you would presume it. The question that I have,
sure.
And if he hadn't had that experience per se, it's going to be traumatizing. What did he ever do to get over that in terms of healing from that and becoming a functional individual? Because like one thing one of my wife's good friends works with children soldiers, and it was out of Rwanda. And the presumption is they can never be functional adult humans with that level of trauma. And it is a difficult process. But what did your dad do to actually heal from that?
That's a great question, because my dad, when he got to this country, he started working in Queens, New York as a busboy, and he was an alcoholic. My dad, was very upfront with me. He was an alcoholic. He was a smoker, and he wasn't sleeping a lot because when he was working, drinking. And it wasn't until he met my mom, and my mom was pregnant with me, that my dad decided to just quit alcohol and quit smoking altogether, because he knew he was having me. And then my dad also found religion. Now, my dad grew up, he didn't grow up, but when I was born, my dad became like an evangelical Christian, like, very hardcore fundamentalist Christian. And my dad, to this day, he's a preacher. Not anymore. He works at a steakhouse now. My dad's a very good executive chef, but when he lived in New Jersey, he used to be a preacher. He would preach on the weekends, and he was very active in the church, very active in the community. Now he lives down in North Carolina at a steakhouse. He lives in North Carolina now, works at a steakhouse, and he's the top chef there.
Nice. That's amazing.
But yeah, that's how my dad sort of. He's very much, a Bible thumping, man of God. He genuinely has a real love and respect for God. And he tells me every day that he prays for me, and he never lets me forget my relationship with God. So,
do you ever get that you look like Seth Rogen? You have to get that you look like Seth Rogen.
oh no,
It's one of the rare times when I can say it because he's white, and so like I won't get accused of racism.
racism.
Like for some reason you can't tell. It's if you're talking to a black guy, you're like you can't say you look like X,
Yeah,
Y,
yeah.
and Z because dude, it's uncanny, but in a good way when he was young and before he became I don't think
Sure.
he's become much of a jackass now, but like I feel like I'm talking with him. All right, dude. So now you're still running for office. When is that election coming?
November 3rd, 2026. I am currently an independent candidate. Now, there is speculation as to whether or not I will run in the primary, in the Democratic primary. And my only answer is that I've committed to do that if no other challenger does so in January of 2026, because the Democratic Party here is talking a lot of crap about taking down Richie Torres. He is universally hated right now in the United States. He takes the most APAC money, and people here in the Bronx, people around the country want to see him ousted. And as a result, but I don't see anybody coming forward to primary him. And I think, therefore, this is just more Democrat shit talking because the establishment Democrats will maybe let one or two go, but he's very entrenched. I don't think they'll actually challenge him. So I might do that in January if nobody else does. So we'll see. But for now, November of 2026.
I'm going to ask the stupid question. Richie Torres he's got to be a Democrat.
Yes.
Okay. I know him. I've picked some fights with him on Twitter, like, just needling him because I have to go back and check Consistent Idiot from what I recollect. We're going to have something not even something in common. We're going to come from the same perspective here because I think your experience with call it the radical left is going to be, similar observations to those who are conservative, which I don't put myself in that title, but whatever. It's like right now it's a dichotomy. I guess the question is this: we're sitting down. I don't know how different we are ideologically. I was never a Bernie bro. But in 2016, I said, between Bernie and Trump on a foreign policy perspective, they both have good ideas. And it was only when Bernie literally bent over and kissed the ring or licked the boot or whatever you want to.
Yeah.
Licking Hillary's boot is an awful visual. That's when I said this guy's a freaking coward. It's come out that he's even worse than that. He's a pharma whore and a champagne socialist. 2024, who'd you vote for? Not that it's my business.
I wrote in the name of my friend's mother. Okay. Because I didn't like any of the presidential candidates, and I voted for somebody I thought would do a good job.
Okay, fantastic.
She's a sweetheart. She's a Southern lady who is like just the sweetest person I know. I'd rather her, be in charge. Because when you go vote for anything, for any office, you're saying, who do you think should be running the country? I didn't think any of the people should be running the country. That being said, I was preying on Kamala's downfall. I was not going to tolerate another extension of just another 4 years of just, somebody else running the office. The entire Biden administration, he was not in charge. I genuinely believe other people were running that administration, and that was a very terrifying time in our country. Now, I think there are forces within the Trump administration that are constantly wresting control from the president. And I think that could explain the sort of wishy-washiness about Trump one day saying he's anti-war, the next day he's saying let's go full throttle support for Israel, one day saying let's have peace and here's a Hamas ceasefire, to Hamas are terrorists and we're going to blow them all apart. I genuinely think that there are forces right now. There's a chance, there's an opportunity for people to grab the Trump administration. And I know this is like what I'm saying is like very much hearsay to people on the left who support me, because they say there's no way you could ever work in a Trump administration. You got to understand that I don't see the president the same way I see the presidency, because the institution of the office of the presidency is a completely different animal than whoever is in the office of the presidency. We have seen many examples in the past before where, whether it's Lincoln or FDR or even Kennedy, of great presidents who actually do listen to an organized constituency, who do things that are good for the country despite whatever ideological constraints they may have. So whether it's Douglas and Lincoln, or whether it's FDR being influenced by, I forget this guy's name, who was trying to pass the anti-lynching laws, but they held marches in Washington, and that got FDR to desegregate the industrial plants. or whether it was Kennedy listening to the citizenry of people who just didn't want to die in a nuclear war. And he and his brother hunkered down and got us out of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think that we can always have that opportunity, especially with the Trump administration, who, he is a populist. He will listen to his people. And the problem there is who is reporting to him what his people think.
That is, I brought up jokingly, Susie Wiles is the gatekeeper of some information, which some people attribute a certain more war whorish perspective than what Trump, what I sincerely think Trump believes. He wants to make peace, and yet there's a complex that might, compel him to make war. What was I about to say? Oh, let me just address one thing in the chat. Everyone's, I in terms of this shooting and people hypothesizing that there was an Israeli connection to it. First of all, I don't discount or write off any what they call conspiracy theories. I do think when you're theorizing and hypothesizing, you should be much clearer than some people asserting things as a bold statement of fact one day into the event. I would also suggest, and you can take this with a grain of salt, that if you're going to accuse Charlie Kirk was a strong supporter of Israel, although he had recently started criticizing or questioning certain policies. But before you accuse someone's effectively a good friend of murdering them, maybe wait a week so that people can have a funeral and mourn before you start throwing out these hyperbolic conspiracy theories. Now, that being said, I appreciate the arguments that there's video. I forget the guy's name from InfoWars who put out a video a month ago saying, credible sources, Charlie's
Harrison Smith. Yeah.
Harrison Smith. Sorry, I was going to say Harrison Faulkner or Harrison Ford are the two Harrisons I know. So, I mean, I appreciate the dots that people are connecting to put forward that hypothesis. I'd say it's a little premature and maybe a little insensitive. And also, between statements that he made a month ago versus critiquing transgenderism, which he made a day ago or at the moment he was getting shot, what you selectively decide to attribute as the causal link shows more about your perspective with no judgment. A lot of things are possible. But so we're having this discussion now, Jose, and I think we probably are ideologically more similar in a number of respects. This is the question. Can you have dialogue with I don't even know if I would say the radical left or the left anymore. How do you bridge a divide where the man who was bridging the divide has now been executed for trying to bridge that divide and maybe making a little bit too much headway with those radical forces that don't want to bridge a divide? They want submission, pure and simple.
Well, I think the first thing is you have to look at the fact that just calling yourself left or right, I think you already play into the tool of the empire. You already play into the game of the oligarchs, because what I'm reminded of right now, especially with this killing, is I'm reminded of the period of tension in Italy that was between the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where there were a number of, there were right-wing extremists that were infiltrating communist groups in Italy. And as a result, they were influencing leftists to go and kill out other prominent right-wing leaders. And when they were doing that, this then allowed the right wing to have leverage to say, this is why, look at this, the leftists have gone crazy. We need crackdowns. We need radical suppression right now. And that is what I think we're seeing here now. Although, as to whether or not the shooter was left wing, right wing, see, I don't think his radicalization began in college. I think it began when he was given the computer. So there was a photo.
I saw the picture. Someone said it's the saddest thing they've seen. I was not able to independently verify it. Do I understand that it was a post from the mother on Instagram saying we got him a computer, now he can ignore us?
It was a post on Facebook that she posted in 2013. I was browsing her Facebook just before she made it private or deleted some stuff. And so we finally got him a computer, so now he can ignore. She was being sarcastic, right?
Yeah. Here, I got it. Let me bring it up right now.
I think it was 2013 that she posted.
It's like, yeah, first of all, you don't know if it's AI. You don't know if it's the right person, but yeah, this is the saddest picture I've ever seen. And it's, I guess it's confirmed to be the mother, Amber Jones Robinson. Almost forgot Tyler. He can totally avoid us now that he got all of the computer accessories he's been wanting.
Yeah. See, so the fact that also there was a video of a high school friend of his who said that, or not a high school friend, but someone who went to school with him said he was a Reddit kid. He was chronically online,
Well,
quoting Reddit all the time.
if I may interrupt, don't be offended if I interrupt. I have to do it.
Please.
Reddit is a toxic leftist hellhole. I mean,
That's true.
I appreciate the idea that left and right is a false dichotomy. Well, you can call it progressive. We know what colloquially it means. I call it red pilled versus blue pilled. But Reddit is a toxic leftist hellhole that is. I don't know what. I'm trying to think of a platform that's worse than Reddit. Maybe Blue Sky in terms of promoting violence and toxicity. But so yes, sorry. So I appreciate the left-right distinction, but I think we know what we're talking about when we say it.
Well,
and
I mean, I don't disagree with you that Reddit is a leftist hellhole, because I had organized an Ask Me Anything on the official Ask Me Anything subreddit for William Binney. He was the former NSA technical director. And we had done this in 2020, I think, right? It was during COVID, because we had to do it all via Zoom. 2021 or 2020, we did a Q&A with him, and the moderators of the largest subreddit shut it down after 15 minutes because he said there was no Russian hack. And after 15 minutes, they were like, nope, sorry, this is now a conspiracy theory hellhole, which, as we know now, there was no Russian hack. And Binney was right since 2021. Regardless, the reason I'm bringing up him being on Reddit, and also the stuff that was engraved on the bullets. So, for example, he had, yes, the Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao. The reason that specific one, I mean, I know it's an Italian anti-fascist song, but it's also a song that was in this game called Hearts of Iron 4, which is a game that was played by people who are on 4chan. And the fact that he also had, if you're reading this, you're gay, LMAO, that's not a political thing. That's just like
but Jose, you can't ignore that the other bullet said, "Hey, fascist cash." So, by the way, I just for the sake of it, I went to Reddit. I put in Viva Fry on Reddit. Look at 2 years ago, Viva Fry, the little George Soros.
Oh my
Not
God.
sure why the listen to this. Not sure why the little George Soros reference, but this Fry guy retweets literal white supremacy, and Dwayne. I don't know who Dwayne Combs is. Your thoughts? And I said this guy was he was carrying a gun. And I said I would feel safer in his presence than not in his presence. I don't know. I'm a George Soros. My goodness, it's amazing. You can't win.
my overall argument, just to kind of cut to the meat and potatoes of this, is that the internet today has allowed a generation of people, the Gen Z people. I mean, I was born in 1998. My birthday's in just 5 days, so I'll be 27.
Dude, you were born in. Do you know what I was? I was dating my wife in '98.
Yeah, wow.
This is wild. I'm 46. Hold on. Yeah, I'm 46. Oh my God, you're a baby. Yes. Okay. And it's an interesting thing because I'll share my thoughts on this. But yeah, go on about the internet because I think I know where you're going.
Well, the internet as a whole, it has allowed for that. Like, this meme culture is a way in which Gen Z is trying to claim its identity in a world that is completely gone to shit, basically. If you look, so I was 3 years old, just barely 3 years old, when 9/11 happened in 2001. And then you have the invasion of Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, the fall of Libya. You see Gaddafi get executed on live TV. You see Obama messing around with Syria, Yemen. You're seeing just endless war. You're seeing how they executed Yahya Sinwar, which, I'm not making a statement here or there about whether or not his death was justified. That's a whole other thing I don't want to go down on. But the public cheering of execution, murder, and violence. Then you have this age of neoconservatism where it's okay to go and invade other countries as long as you dehumanize them, right? So it's okay to go out and destabilize a country in Venezuela. It's okay to go and destabilize a country in South or Central America. It's okay to kill leaders that we don't like. And so this kind of internalized violence is the problem, is the culture that has been cultivated not just by America, but also by Hollywood and video games.
But let me push back on that, because, by the way, incidentally, I have a similar perspective, and I think it's even more not extreme's not the right word. The nihilism coupled with not appreciating that you view everything as avatars on a screen, and so you see a horrific execution and you're like, oh, that was wild, and now I go back to the rest scrolling through. Now I posted my deep thoughts on Locals this morning. The community rightly said, well, none of this is new. It's sort of an iteration of things past. You had public executions, you had the Dark Ages, you had You had children soldiers before the internet, where you taught them to not regard humans as humans, and so it's been history rhyming but not repeating, and this is the modern iteration of what has existed throughout humankind.
Well, yes, but see, David Grossman, he wrote a whole book on just how video games, he argues, were created for the Vietnam War. They were created by British simulation training because the soldiers that they were sending to Vietnam weren't pulling the trigger enough, and they needed to create a way to induce them to be able to pull triggers. Because before the Vietnam War, and I think even before the Korean War, soldiers weren't pulling the trigger. Most of those battles were fought by 15 to 20% of the people, especially during the Civil War. Only 15% of guns were actually fired. There were battlefields where most guns were still cold, never shot, and people were, so you only had a few commandos that were actually doing a lot of the heavy killing in these things. But now you have it so that the video game culture is so pervasive that you have turned death into memes. Like, I saw the disgusting jokes that were being made about Charlie Kirk's death, turning it into jokes, turning it into memes, people making fun of it as if it's nothing, because this open display of just terror, especially in the minds of people who are teenagers and early 20s now, to them, it's just become just another thing they see on the screen of violence. Go on.
Did you see Sean Strickland's video that he took a bit of flack for, where he's in a car and he's like, I heard the video was out there and I was almost like exhilarated, and I went and saw it. It was a self-reflective form of like, what the hell of a monster have I become? Not even society at large, although he went there. But then again, but just also to push back on this, you're too young to remember this, but in the early advent of the internet, 96 to 2000, all that you were looking at were horrible, horrible videos. I don't know if you know who Bud Dwyer is.
Yeah, he's the one who shot himself.
He shot himself in the face, and then they made remixes, they made songs of it. Now, yeah, I think I do all Steelman. I think it's a little different because even then it was shared as a matter of horror and not as a matter of pure entertainment, which I think is different today. Which is why I'm wondering where that distinction comes in. If it's a lack of parenting, giving the kids the understanding that these are real humans, or if it's a tendency of nihilism among the youth.
I think it is a tendency of nihilism. And you look at Columbine, they were playing Doom, but that's not the thing that I think attributes why they became the way they did. The day that Columbine happened in Littleton, Colorado, was the same day that Bill Clinton dropped the most bombs in Yugoslavia. There was still the whole war in Kosovo going on with NATO, people dying, people being reported to die every day. And I think it was only bound to get worse from there, because now you've gamified human life and killing. You look at games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't play these games. I'm still on Nintendo NES, and I maybe do the Wii golf, but I mean, but there was Contra, where one little dot it touches your foot, you're gone.
Now this stuff is like hyper realistic. I mean, you must know Fortnite. At least that's like the more safe, cartoony versions of, people shooting each other. That's like, but then you have like this game, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, where you're simulating a 5-person team, an insurgency team, taking down 5 terrorists, right, that are trying to plant the bomb, and it's realistic and it's gory. On top of that, there are video games and movies too. There are movies that glorify violence, killing. Like, for example, this movie Sinners that came out with Michael B. Jordan in it. There was the one about the vampires. Well, the whole ending is him playing out this fantasy of killing white supremacists that were going to kill him first. These weren't even vampires anymore. These were just, people. These were just like human beings at that point, that he was just fantasizing that he wanted to go on a rampage to. So I say this because it has only become much more intense and much more gorier. And I think that we have to treat the new level of violence not as just merely a cultural thing, but now as a national security question.
Well, I know, but I agree with you on that. But this is the question, and it'll be a loaded question. Do you think it's symmetrical dehumanization rhetoric in the wake of violent acts on the so-called left and the so-called right?
Yeah, because if you, for example, you can't, I think, what was it, a couple days ago, there was a 13-year-old that was found hoarding like 24 guns or something, and she was admiring the other previous school shooters. I'm not going to say a 13-year-old was left or right, I don't, but see, I will say, like, for example, there's people on the left that openly call for liberation politics. Like they quote Franz Fanon as if this is, he has this whole thing about how if you're living in a colony and you're part of an oppressive state, you have a right to stand up and defeat your oppressors. I think that that's wrong. I don't think that here in the United States of America, where you have a constitution and a Declaration of Independence, gives you, that you have to then therefore take up the cause of violence by kidnapping and shooting politicians. And that is a problem on the left, where they do have this rhetorical, hey, you have the right to go and kill anybody who's oppressing you. But on the same token, after Mamdani won in New York City, no matter what you think about his politics, to equate him by saying that, he was cheering on 9/11, even though he was only like 10 at the time.
Well, I mean, but hold on. First of all, I'll also say demonizing the politician, even if it's unjust, is far different than cheering on murder. But even with Mamdani, when you've made famous or at least adopted the globalize the Intifada, it's not entirely without basis, that type of criticism. I don't know what he did in 9/11, but I know that he's talked about globalizing the Intifada in modern times. But that's sort of again, I'm pointing fingers. Who the hell am I going to?
No, but like
it's the left. It is when Nancy Pelosi's husband got hit with the hammer. People were making jokes, but most of those jokes were based on not believing the official narrative, not saying, "Oh, you should have hit him in the head harder," like they said, "You had better aim" when they missed Trump. So, in my view, and I don't think anyone's going to convince me otherwise, it's entirely asymmetrical. It's entirely cultural on the nihilistic left, which is nihilistic precisely because it doesn't believe in God, and it's not both sides at all. It's one side that is rabidly, violently pro-death, pro-murdering their ideological adversaries. And if you find some crass humor on the right, that's about the extent of it. I mean, even when Nick Fuentes had the guy show up at his front door to kill him, people were on the right were saying this is a step too far. It wasn't even the right saying, "Yeah, go get Nick Fuentes."
See, but here's the funny part. Like everything you just said, that sincerity that you have, that this is the left. So I posted a statement where I told people at the end, we have to end this cycle. We can't continue it. The more you cheer on his death, the more the cycle of violence continues. And somebody commented to me, the last sentence, I don't agree with your last sentence. The difference is the left isn't enacting literal terror by wanting everyone to have access to a better life. And their behavior, ideology, and intention for our country is fascist Nazi shit. Now, I'm not saying that to say that that person's right. I think they're wrong. But see,
I don't even understand what the hell that possibly means.
But see that
other than repeating the same, repeating the statements that have indoctrinated and radicalized that person. If it's fascism and it's good life and death, well, then you're justified in killing them and you're justified in celebrating their death.
Yes, but see, that's my point. Like the sincerity that you feel about saying that the left is the ones that are doing this is the same sincerity that people on the left feel about the right.
Well, but don't confound sincerity with accuracy. Like people can, I always use my schizophrenic aunt. She sincerely believed she was dating a doctor, but she wasn't. So, I sincerely believe that.
Yeah.
True. It's right though, and it's demonstrably accurate. They're referring to Nazis. I mean, because of healthcare. I mean, Nazis don't deny healthcare. Nazis administer death care. So
well, yes,
they might be. They're sincerely deluded, but they're sincerely wrong.
But I think the problem is if you just start saying that it's one side doing this or one side doing that. Well, my point overall is that you live in a culture of violence that has been most likely foreign induced. And I genuinely mean that. Operation Gladio. Are you familiar with Operation Gladio?
Yes, but recount it for the crowd so that I don't get accused of inaccurately summarizing it.
Operation Gladio was a NATO and British-led operation post-World War II where they repurposed the Nazis that were left over to go and create in Europe instability by assassinating different leaders, by creating tensions of period, by creating periods of tension, by going out and causing all kinds of terroristic attacks so that there could be implementation of fascism and authoritarian crackdowns. And I think what we're seeing play out here, especially if people want to just make this a left-right divide, because I'm telling you, there's going to be people who are going to say, the right is going to want retaliation for this.
Yeah, but they are saying, but there hasn't been. And there's someone on the left saying, oh my goodness, the right's going to come and get violent. We see what happens when an icon or a so-called martyr on the left dies. They riot and burn shit down. Charlie Kirk was killed. Donald Trump, they tried to kill him. There was no rioting. There was no retribution. There was no
Thank
reprisal
God.
violence. But that's because it is asymmetrical, because one side is, unless someone makes a compelling argument, prone to violence. Not there's some sides will say there's violent rhetoric on both sometimes. But one side is quite clearly prone to violence to a much greater degree, and someone's going to have to convince me that that's not the case. And it has to do with indoctrination in being taught. I could tell you why it's asymmetrical, because they've got the bullhorn of the media. They've got the media brainwashing these vulnerable kids into thinking everyone's a Nazi if they're right wing, and they're going to kill your kids. They're going to deny you health care if you want to go get an abortion. They're going to kill you literally and then enslave you. And so it is life or death, and you're justified in violence. I mean, that's what Punch a Nazi was.
Yeah, but then what do you think is the solution then? Because if you just further demonize the people that you think are the ones that are going to cause violence, why does that not then set the justification for somebody on the right to say, well, I got to go take care of this?
Well, first of all, they don't do that, though. My argument would be, what's the solution? Good protection, good application of the law, and bankrupting these MSM outlets that are themselves the tool of the devil. I mean, you talk about the culture of violence to explain it in the States. Dude, I'm from Canada. The rabid liberal left in Canada are just as toxic, just as prone to violence, and just as prone to, sorry, I shouldn't say violence, but rather promoting violence. And I genuinely think it has to do with the brain chemistry of someone who becomes a liberal or a progressive or a Democrat later in life. But the culture of violence doesn't really explain it away, because there's some historically violent cultures that are not this way, and then there's some that are, like Canada, which are somewhat. But I'm not going to fear demonizing them when they're literally murdering people and then cheering it on afterwards. They're demonizing themselves.
That's a generalization, because again, what do you mean they are? Are you saying that? Because I don't consider myself a right winger. I don't even consider myself a left winger. If being left wing means cheering on the death of an individual, then I'm not that.
But Jose, go. Have you done this experiment? Go out and I mean, maybe you have. Say unequivocally condemn Charlie Kirk's. No, I unequivocally condemn this. Period. See what the responses you'll get from.
There are plenty of people on the left who are doing that.
No. First of all, there are. Like the guy asking the question to Charlie Kirk when he was killed, who then gets shit from his own crowd and then has to come out and put out a video saying, this isn't helpful. It's like, we're peaceful. Why the hell are half of the replies supporting the assassination? So go do it. See what happens, Jose. I think you'll get chewed out by actual people who call themselves lefties.
Well, so what? That doesn't mean that they're right.
No, I know it means that they're wrong, but it means that there's a propensity among them.
Yeah, but my point is that I'm prepared to go out there and tell them that they're wrong.
But I don't consider you a lefty, by the way. Just like,
well, I appreciate that.
You're an actual reasonable person.
I appreciate that, but I see the thing is, overall, you have a generation of up and coming young people right now. I mean, you have to think about the people who are 7 years old, the people who are 10 years old and 15 years old right now. They are watching this play out, and the way people react right now is going to define the next 20 to 30 years. And that was my point with starting about 9/11. That was my point with starting about Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Libya, blaming the Russians for this and that, cheering on public executions. You know, this kid is 22 years old. You know, what has he seen growing up from the American and foreign governments and how they handle going after other countries? That is the kind of internalized language where you approve that stuff and you cheer that stuff on, you're basically legitimizing violence as a form of communication. And, you know, I just think that we cannot lose the forest for the trees here. I'm just trying to say, if we give into the left-right maxim of violence, which violence has no political ideology, there have been examples of right-wing violence, as you know, and there have been examples of left-wing violence. You know, does one side react worse than another? Fine. I will admit that to you. You're right. There hasn't been riots. But at the same time, we cannot give into it, because then the people who are taking advantage of the division, the people who are trying to stoke fear within us, within our neighbors, are going to win. Then we forget who's actually behind the creating the culture of this violence. You know, you ever read Julian Huxley's Border Encampment Without Walls? No. You know, this whole thing that he wrote this in the 40s. He's the brother of Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World. And he talked about his critique of 1984. He said, I don't think authoritarianism is going to come in the form of, a total authoritarian takeover. I think it's going to come in the form of making people so afraid that they are begging that you take their rights away to make them feel safe.
Well,
and that's what this is.
If you're okay, because then we're dealing with a two-layered problem as to the immediate proximate threats and responses versus the longer-term solution to the underlying structure that may have caused this. Do I believe that there's a military-industrial complex that refuses to accept global peace and does whatever it can using the MSM apparatus to foment a public sentiment to support global endless wars? Yes. Do I believe that maybe there's an underlying police state, full one government control, and the more you destabilize society, the more you can justify that? Yes, as well. So tackling that is one issue. Tackling the immediate leftists saying words are violence, and if you say words I don't like, that I get to enact violence. Well, that's a much more proximate, immediate threat, and a separate way of addressing it is not through reprisal violence, lest you get into generational violence in various parts of the world, but I'll take Ireland as one. So there are two separate problems, and one is much more proximate than the other. So my biggest issue with this, in terms of, like I say, leave it to the parents. The parents are the ones on Twitter now cheering it on. Professors are cheering it on. These institutions are cheering it on, and not both sides. I have not seen anybody saying, yeah, someone. Well, maybe there's somebody. Nobody was saying, yeah, David DePop should have hit Nancy Pelosi's husband harder in the head and finished the job. Nobody said that. When Trump was nearly assassinated, it was not just nutcases, it was mainstream tolerated. And in the wake of this case, you go see Canadian news saying, to hell with Charlie Kirk, he reaped what he sowed. These are terrorist organizations. So long-term, one thing. Short-term, I know what I would do to deal with it.
Well, but see, the thing is, I don't think you can look. I mean, I like your characterization of these two problems, but the thing is, I would say the secondary problem about how leftists react to this is a extension of the first problem. And if you don't address actually the first problem, the second problem is only going to get worse and worse. Because, see, that's the thing. How do you think Palantir recruits people? How do you think Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris recruit young people out of college? They love the video game culture, because then when they're designing weapons and bombs that can kill people in a smaller radius, right, then they're desensitized to people. Then they don't care. They don't see people as human beings, which is why they can cheer on the death of Charlie Kirk. And I'm telling you that, yes, young people tend to be leftist. That is true. And I think that, but the leftist ideology is not what's making them violent. What's making them violent is years of neoconservative imperialist wars that have trickled down to the violence down here.
That's where I think you're going to lose a lot of, not that it matters. That's where I think you're going to lose a lot of people, like the years of neoconservative violence. It's generally devaluing life, where you can have a what's her face? Not Nancy Albright. Who is that British woman? Oh, yes, I think 250,000 Iraqis was worth regime change.
Oh, that fucking bitch. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Margaret, no.
Oh, come on. The chat's going to get it before we do. Come on, don't say. Hold on, I'm going to look.
Okay.
Come on, what's her name?
Madeleine Albright.
Madeleine Albright. What did I say? Susan Albright?
Something like that.
No, I can appreciate that. But then the problem is, because you're too young, Jose. Like when I was a kid, who was one of those bands where somebody committed suicide by listening to the music? They said, oh, the music is making people violent. The video games of the 80s and the 90s are making people violent. Now, I do think or the internet is desensitizing people to this. And I do agree with that. I think there's something fundamentally different about social media now than the internet in the late 90s. And I think there's something fundamentally different about the video games now versus the video games of the 80s and 90s. But for me, it's seeing the adults doing this, and the kids learn from the adults. I was talking with my kid who's in the high school, and she's a smart kid, so I don't have to worry about these things. And she has good friends. But I said, like, so what's been the reaction to have people just been shocked and appalled? She's like, there's a lot of kids who are saying good. And it's like, I said, where the fuck are their parents? Like, but then their parents might be the ones saying, yeah, he's a Nazi. He got what he had coming. Like,
but why are the parents saying that?
Because they're fucking crazy liberals.
Well, but see,
Democrats.
That's a generalization. Because,
yes, it is, but the generalizations are not always wrong.
but see, See, but then why are they crazy liberals? Is this just a case that, oh, they just happen to be crazy liberals? I think the social engineering here is an aspect that cannot be overlooked when you, especially now, when you're growing up in an environment where people willingly give away their behavior and their characteristics to social media and the internet in an age where everything is surveilled, monitored, and analyzed, down to the advertisements that you see. The social programming and the social engineering is insane and absurd, and it does manipulate how people think, and that's a pretty crazy thing, right? That people don't want to actually confront.
No,
Are your thoughts your actual thoughts? Are your beliefs actually your beliefs, or were you induced to believe this because of things that you saw on the internet that you may or may not think is true?
Oh, hold on. Did I just kick myself out of here? No, I'm still here.
No,
I wanted to bring up, someone said because of propaganda. This is where, again, Jose, I think we do agree. I never even entertained the idea that because I said the world went off a fucking cliff in 2015 when Trump announced he was running and then got elected. It's like something broke. And then for those who are interested, Mark Grobert, America's Untold Stories, said the last decade has been the modern iteration of MK Ultra, Operation MK Ultra, a mass brainwashing. And I think he's right. They use the media, whether or not they exploit more, biological things like endocrine disruptors or the food that's literally food making people dumb, more manipulatable, more easily manipulated. I agree with that. But that being said, it definitely does seem to be asymmetrical in terms of which side is affected by it. And maybe some people are hypothesizing that the jab is also, making people. I'm not entertaining this one so much, but and so the one side that disproportionately is already affected, impacted, gets it, and becomes even more radical, which we've seen over the last 5 years. So definitely we agree. And I think we agree in the observation that it's disproportionately on the left. And then the only question is the suggestion that it might be the uni party that's to blame by manipulating the left to extract a response from the right, a response which they have yet to extract.
But see, the thing is, it's like the right wing I've seen just cheer on endless war.
Yeah.
I saw them
I wouldn't say the right wing, but I would say, well, first of all, I would say even it would be more left than the right now.
Well, whether it's liberals or conservatives, they were both cheering on when Gaddafi got impaled live on TV, right? And that stuff was being played out. Or like, for example, why is it that the same liberal crowd that was protesting George Bush in the early 2000s changes their programming when George Bush comes on to Stephen Colbert's show and suddenly he's like the hero, oh yeah, he's anti-Trump.
Right? I'd say because, well, first of all, they may have thought, first of all, it was anti-Trump is the answer. And then, when every Republican dies, the left loves them.
Why did Kamala Harris think that campaigning with Liz Cheney was a viable strategy?
Because she's an idiot, and Liz Cheney is a lefty. Like Liz Cheney's I don't even want to say a rhino, like a Republican in name only. She's not. I think a uni party. We can agree on the uni party for Cheney, Kinzinger, but I also think that there are evil politicians on the right. There's no question about that. The question is only right now. The current culture and the current climate is disproportionately violent rhetoric and violent actions from the left, egged on by the media, which does brainwash people, which is almost exclusively an apparatus of the left. And I appreciate what you're saying about the broader social tolerance for violence or even encouragement of it. I remember you were shock and awe. Were you even alive for shock and awe? 96? No, hold on.
Not.
Shock and awe was hold on. Shock and awe was 2001, so you're still a kid. That was in response when they invaded Iraq. People were like, yeah, watching war on television. I appreciate that. I don't know that can explain what we're seeing right now. But the question is, how do you have dialogue with people who literally want you dead, literally make you dead, and then literally cheer once they've done it?
Well, who are you having dialogue with? And also, how do you know that the people on the internet that you're having so-called dialogue with, how much, like, I remember, who was it? It was some event had happened where a friend of mine was scrolling through her Facebook and she thought, oh my God, I can't believe people are cheering this on. And I said, well, wait a minute. Those are just the comment sections. How do you actually know that those accounts that you're even reading are from real people? How do you know that this is an extension of that same social programming so that people think in herd mentalities? If some, housewife in some neighborhood sees 6 people on Facebook who live in her area, who maybe she's never met, and they just happen to live in the same area she does, and they're all saying the same thing, she'll be inclined to think the same thing. Because like, well, if my neighbors think this, then yeah, I think this too.
There's zero question that there is social engineering, and the internet is being used inorganically to drive certain ideologies. Zero question in my view, and I think part of it, we noticed it with COVID, and you start seeing things in inorganic accounts. That being said, which is why I'm typically more reluctant to place any weight on an anonymous account or someone who I don't know is a real person. But then you get to the big accounts of people who you know are real. Now that I'm thinking of some of them, I'm not sure that some of these are real, but they're the ones who are spreading it. And you see people in real life actually encouraging it, like real video, unless it's not real video.
Well, like for example, Gunther Eagleman and these other big accounts were caught recently getting paid by accounts in India to go and spread pro-India.
I don't think it was confirmation they got paid. They definitely spread messaging in tandem, almost verbatim. I don't know who doesn't think, who doesn't think the internet's not going to find out, unless I'm mistaken, because I'll give them credit. I don't know that there's evidence they got paid. I just checked also, by the way, Harry J. Sisson is confirmed to have been paid by the Democrats. So, but yes, so
there's confirmed sissy. But sorry.
Oh, and a confirmed freaking dirty, and I won't say pedo because they were of age, but a freaking pervert who exploits women, at least digitally. Ugh. But that being said, so now we're in the wake of the most. It was reminiscent of JFK. There was no video of MLK. There was Gaddafi. There was video, but it was still like, not still. It was like, first of all, Gaddafi, I think people would agree is a bad man, whatever. But even still, anybody cheering that on is an animal. And I put Hillary Clinton there. When Osama bin Laden died, and I saw people cheering, I was like, you don't cheer that you killed someone. The world will be safer with some people put to death. You don't cheer that you had to do it, but there are real people with the media apparatus cheering this, and putting a little but doesn't change the fact that they're cheering it. And then further demonizing a response that has not yet come to further encourage more of this type of violence. It's all on the left. And I'm not apologizing for it. It is. Then the question is, how do you deal with it? Other than protect yourself at all times. And I don't know.
Well, we'll just have to disagree that it's all on the left. I mean, one of the things that we had talked about before was you said that you don't see any conservatives shutting down liberal venues. But let me pose this to you. Dr. Mark Perlmutter was a doctor. He's a Jewish doctor from North Carolina who went to Gaza twice during and after October 7th. And I think he wants to go back now too. And he went back during the ceasefire and when the ceasefire broke just last year, or this year, excuse me. And when he wanted to speak at Mount Sinai Hospital here in New York City, people who call themselves pro-Israeli flooded the hospital so that he wouldn't give a talk on the Upper East Side. And my campaign had to come in and find an alternate venue for him within 48 hours. And we did that. There are coordinated attempts. And by the way, Mark Perlmutter and Feroz Sidwa, 2 doctors who were in Gaza who are brilliant, who have pieces written in the New York Times, who have, not that the New York Times is any good outlet, by the way. Sorry. And
don't worry, we swear all the time here.
And and they've testified at the Security Council at the United Nations, at least Dr. Feroz Sidwa has. They've met with legislators. These are not political people. Like, they will tell you firsthand, I don't have a stake in the political race. I just want to tell what I saw. That is what they are interested in. And there are people who are conservative, who call themselves pro-Israeli, who are trying to silence their voice right now.
I should correct then. You're right. It's not exclusive. There are exceptions, or if it's like 10-1, 8-1, it's disproportionate is my point. But it's to be expected as well, because there's a disproportionate control of the levers of power and the bullhorns to reach. And so it's normal, but it's undeniable. And yeah, you'll find some examples. You'll find some examples of right-wing violence. But I think a lot of the anti-government stuff is itself operations. But
I don't want to see. But that's the thing. I don't want to keep giving into it, because then I think every time we give into this fighting, who does it more, who does it less, We let the powers that be win. I think the person who's closest on this is Mike Cernovich. Cernovich, who I've disagreed with in the past, has been saying the reason we're not going to see the Discord messages is because the FBI was probably in those Discord servers. We know that the FBI has a history. Like here in the Bronx, for example, they were involved in blowing up a synagogue, or they were involved in the kidnapping of Governor Whitmer.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what role did the FBI play in this? I'm not saying that they orchestrated it. I'm not going to say that without proof, but did they know who this guy was?
I'm going to wait. Incidentally, I will wait for the Discord messages to not be released before coming to that negative conclusion, but I will come to that same negative conclusion if there's not total transparency. And for the exact same reasons, I assume, probably wrongly so, because there's a lot of overlap between the old FBI and the current one. They've got different heads now, but I would imagine there was the terrorist guy. Was it 9/11? I think it was to blow up the building in Chicago. It's all not informants, but entrapments. And if they do not disclose that, I'll come to that conclusion as well. But for the time being, until proof that the FBI was involved in this,
fair enough. But my point is simple. It's like if you demonize an entire group of people, just for the actions of an individual who even then, like, I still don't think it's clear that this guy had a left wing or right wing. I genuinely believe that he came from a generation of just irony and nihilism that permeates our godless culture. But it's not a left wing. And even if you do believe it's like almost exclusively leftist that are purporting this violence, then you cannot reduce that the leftism is the causing the violence. I think this stuff is being induced. And I don't disagree with you that it is coming from college institutions. I do agree with you that there are institutional methods of instilling violence into young people. I just don't think that that's exclusive to any one left or right ideology.
Well,
I think it's a foreign problem. I think the British have always been experts at causing division amongst countries as a way to create political instability so that you can get authoritarian fascist crackdowns. And I think this is all related to Palantir, because now they have the argument to say, well, we need more surveillance. How do we know that there aren't more left-wing loonies?
Well, I do think we might not get there, because I think a lot of the people who lived and learned through 9/11 are not going to allow the Patriot Act 2.0 to pass now. That being said, they sure as hell welcomed in the government nanny state during COVID, some states more than others. But hold on, I had a thought there. Oh, yes. Sorry. You said, like, don't blame the entire group for the acts of one people. And without broadening that statement, I could say, like, he might, it could have turned out that he was actually either just an outright schizo or anti-government. And it could have been, I did have this theory or thought. It could have actually been someone who's angry at Charlie Kirk and a Trump supporter because Charlie might have been asking some questions or, talking about Epstein files, and he didn't like it because it was going to compromise the Trump administration. And so I could entertain that idea. It might have very well turned out to be that case. It doesn't look like it did. Even still, the fact that this person or their act was adopted and celebrated by the left, it might have been totally unrelated, but they made it their own when they said, yay, Charlie got what he deserved.
And that was wrong. And that was wrong. And
that was a groundswell to the point where you should fear professors at universities. You should fear nurses at hospitals. You should fear doctors who say they're not going. Charlie got what he deserved. Do no harm. And it was pretty much universally one-sided.
Yeah, but see, then why is that different than when you have journalists who die in Gaza, like Anas al-Sharif? And then the IDF comes out and says, no, he wasn't a journalist. He was working for Hamas. Oh, okay, great. And then you get people who cheer that on as well. Or you get people who cheer on the overthrow of the government, or who cheer on this execution of this boat, where Marco Rubio posted this snuff film of people being killed on a boat with no due process whatsoever. Just take our word for it. This was a drug boat. This tiny drug smuggling boat was definitely on its way to America. And JD Vance then tweets out, because somebody said, hey, if you're just doing this without due process, this is a war crime. And JD Vance says, I don't give a shit what you call it.
Yeah, well, no, I think he says, I think look, I appreciate some tweets are less well drafted than others. I think it was someone in particular. He said, I don't give a shit what you call it, but I'm not to defend him. That's the steel man. But first of all, those might be legitimate questions. It doesn't necessarily, but there are other problems in other circumstances. Doesn't address this week in the news. This week in the news, you have a political party, in as much as they come out and say we strongly condemn political violence, They're the ones who spent 10 years calling the man who was just murdered a Nazi, far-right extremist, bigot, transphobe, xenophobe. So it's sort of like, not to bring it to the Middle East, because that's the powder keg, no pun intended. Like when terrorist organizations or the leaders apologize, we strongly condemn the violence on both sides. Well, great. Right now we're talking about one side, so I don't want to hear you equivocate. It's a coward's way out. And so when these Democrats who spent 10 years with this I won't say violent rhetoric, but radicalizing rhetoric, now come out and say, let's cool the temperature. My response is to say, go fuck yourselves. I'm not going to say violence on you because I won't do that. But my response is to say, go fuck yourselves. You guys made this. And now the only question is, how the hell do we walk it back? And walk it back after we kill one of your own, the most prominent voice on your side. Let's take a moment and regroup so that we can regroup and then get the next one on your side.
But see, I believe you can't look at current events as just like this is the news of the week and it's going to be something completely different else. There are global apparatuses right now that are trying to shape the way in which the world is going to go forward. I mean, you admitted that there is a military industrial complex right now. And the clearest example of this was there was a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia in April of 2022. And Bojo the Clown, or Boris Johnson, he goes and he sabotages that peace deal by telling Zelensky, we can beat the Russians. And as a result, now what, over 800,000 dead Ukrainians later. That's where we are now. And I'm saying this because what you're seeing, whether it's the political violence here or whether what's happening in Nepal, I think it is all sort of, it's all a response to a dying, because I do believe the military industrial complex is dying. I do believe that the oligarchy is dying, and they are putting out these kinds of violent acts out right now because of the positive developments that we're seeing. For example, did you know, like the SEO summit that just happened, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where Putin, Modi, and Xi met? That is 45% of the Earth's population right there, all meeting in peace. That's billions of people, right? Americans.
Well, some would say they're not meeting in peace. They're meeting in the purpose of global domination or ousting American hegemony, and they view that as an act of aggression and demonize it as such.
They're not against America. They go through great lengths and pains to say they're not anti-Western. You have people like Kirillov who are trying to invite the United States in to the BRICS process, to the Belt and Road process.
Do you get accused of being a Putin puppet for saying things like that?
Da, moya Puruski.
I'm going to go to Reddit and see what they have to say about you.
You can. I get called all kinds of things. Yes.
But I don't disagree with a certain element of it. It definitely is global destabilization so that you can have your new world order, one world government. No question about it, which is why I think people are looking to Trump to fight back against that at a global political scale and not play into it, which some people think he is doing with certain geopolitical decisions. Mm-hmm. But bringing it back home, and like you might be right about these forces at play. The bottom line right now is we're living in a Western society where liberals, progressives, and Democrats look like, talk like, and act like ideological terrorists. They have the levers of power in the media sense, and they, in the wake of their side, well, we'll say their side, if not their side carrying out the murder, at least celebrating it, they then go on to further demonize and say, you should now fear the conservative response to this. And what's that going to dog whistle lunatics to do? So I don't think we disagree on the problem. Now the question is, but I'm not trying to lump you in there either. Maybe you disagree and we'll let the chat. It's not supposed to be a debate. The question is, what do you do about it? And I've got a concrete ideas, which is you treat this as an act of domestic terrorism, and anybody cheering it on and encouraging more, as you have terrorism laws, start adopting them. That being said, people are going to say that leads to the surveillance state of the cameras everywhere, thought crime, and this and that.
Yeah.
But I say you punish the wrongdoers, and you try to win them over if you can. But I'll go with punish and protect before trying to win over people who can't be won over.
I have to jump off this, but I do want to end just with my sort of what do we do about this? And I just want to here's what I'll say. I think that people should look towards the alternatives right now in the world. There are people around the world, whether it's China, Russia, and India, these people, these countries, I think, are asking people to come on, join the United States. I mean, excuse me, they're asking the United States to join them for this new paradigm shift away from this Western alliance, away from this, from these Western colonial powers that are trying to turn us. Excuse me. Let me focus what I'm trying to say here. There is a sort of Western imperialist boot with over 800 military bases around the world right now that thinks it can run the world. And you have Russia, China, and India that are telling the world there is a way forward where we can work together through mutual economic cooperation. And I think that all of the political instability and violence that we're seeing around the world is an example of trying to scare people away from that. Those are my last words. I'm sorry. I forgot I had a meeting.
No, don't go, because I'll read a few of the Rumble rants and chats, and I don't want to do it in front of you. And yeah, Jose, first of all, thank you. I have not only nothing against you, I actually dare say I think I like you, even though we agree on the substantive stuff. You seem like a nice, reasonable person, which is I think that's evidenced by the fact that you're here. The lefties who are not reasonable don't come on because they can't bear to have their idiocy exposed for the world. But go, Jose, and we'll talk, and we'll see you on the interwebs.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry to leave this. Yeah,
don't worry. Rock on. I'm going to kick you out of here. Okay. I hate the fact that it says kick in Rumble Studio. There was a lot of Jew talk in the chat over there. I did see it. Netanyahu executes anybody he doesn't like. Golden Pager, Qatar, Iran, Lebanon, and Syria. I'm not. I say appreciate is almost a. I understand that argument, and Netanyahu had to get a little bit of a slap on the wrist for killing what they call terrorists. And I'm not saying they're not killing terrorists in Qatar, which, while America is also using Qatar as an ally, military incursions into the foreign territory of an ally, an ally of America striking an ally of America will cause some problems. So I understand the sentiment. Jameson 2012, Charlie was a centrist, but it was not jumping to conclusions. If a Dem had been killed instead of Charlie, it would be speculation as to what side. Notice how we have stayed peaceful, and that proves we have stayed true to our values. I agree. That's from our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community. Let me go see if I can see if there's any tip questions on CommuTube. Mandalici says, I realized in 2021 that face crap was brainwashing and using social engineering to provoke others towards hate. I checked out Facebook. Why am I one that's seen and not the others? What are your thoughts on social training? There is zero question. I mean, but the thing is this, we don't even need to ask ourselves if it's by design or by accident. It doesn't matter. It's true. Blue sky is an ideological terrorist breeding ground, period. People think Twitter to some extent as well. I mean, Twitter was used more in the events of January 6th. I don't believe it was an insurrection at all, but to the extent they want to claim it was, Twitter, then they used it to shut down Parler. Twitter was more of an organizational force. Facebook was the organizational force. Whether it's by accident or on purpose or just, pure profiteering. Zuckerberg doesn't want to put in the proper filters to prevent CSAM. It doesn't matter on purpose or not. It's true. Facebook is a toxic, disgusting shithole. And I won't say everyone who's on it is a disgusting, toxic shithole. But they're definitely closer to that than reasonable people. You go onto Facebook and try to be reasonable. And I dare say even try to be conservative or try to be pro-Trump. You'll get it's vitriol. And Reddit and Blue Sky. Now, whether or not 4chan is just as bad for the other side, A, it isn't. And B, they're pretty fucking good on 4chan. I mean, 4chan, I won't compare. The FBI did good. But 4chan does good more often than not. When they found Shia LaBeouf's He Will Not Divide Us flag, you know that you're dealing with, whatever you want to call them, capable people on 4chan. Reddit is just frothing at the mouth. Karens. Oh, fucking moderators on Reddit. Yeah, you didn't put your title properly with the it says brackets. It says no spamming. Oh, I hate Reddit. That was fun. I hope you all enjoyed that. I Saturday stream. I got to go see what the kid is doing, and that was fun. Oh, I wanted to go to CommuTube and see if I could scroll up and see if there were any Crumble rants. Viva, I'm not a locals member, but if I could talk to you, I have a lot to say about the conversation, especially regarding video games and movies. There's too much. That was from Ryan's ammo. There's too much. There's too much, and too many people, and too much to talk about. Let me scroll up here and see what we got. I'm just looking through the chat on CommieTube. Okay, if you are, let me go do this just because I want to do. I put out a video highlighting the abject insanity. This is both out of. We want to talk about both sides. There's no both sides bullshit here. Check out this vlog. Check it out. Make sure that you share it. Send it to somebody who you think can learn from it. That's my, Ilhan Omar and Mehdi Hassan. Some would say foreign agents coming in to stoke divide. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, effectively laughing at what happened to Charlie Kirk, saying, oh, he's got a decade of things he said on the internet. He's not an innocent person. Fuck anybody who thinks that that is the proper response, even to words that you don't like. Anybody who can't hear words without getting violent is an unhinged animal, period. But so go check that one out. And then you got Canadian media, Cult MTL. Charlie reaped what he sowed. The people, I do appreciate that people are revealing who they are, and we're getting into a very critical point of this right now, where you're seeing who is out there that actually promotes violence, that actually tolerates violence, and that actually encourages more violence. It's the media, legacy media, not the independents, not the Joe Rogans of the world, not the Tim Pools of the world, not the Viva Fries, period. Legacy media are animals. And not in the sense of animal, that's dehumanizing rhetoric. I do not promote violence, period. Full stop. And I say, yes, self-defense. And it must be proportionate to the severity and proximateness of the threat. So you don't get to say, well, your rhetoric and sometime might deny me healthcare, therefore it's effectively an immediate threat, so I get to get... No. It's like, someone's breaking into your car, and even then I'll let someone steal material before getting violent with them. So no violence. When I say that they're animals or demons or demonic creatures, it's because they are. But they're not even worthy of political violence. That's my thought of the day. I went biking earlier today. I saw a bobcat. I'm going to bring this up to end on something good. They're not even worthy of political violence. You think I'm gonna ruin my life and waste my life getting violent with some stupid MSM talking head? No, I will resort to violence in the immediate proximate danger, defending myself from immediate potential harm. But as far as it goes, Ilhan Omar is not worth political violence. Mehdi Hassan is not worth political violence. They thought Charlie Kirk was worth political violence because, unfortunately, he was actually changing minds through dialogue, and they can't have that. They have someone who's actually changing minds through dialogues. That's when they get violent, because they don't have any ideas that are defensible, and they don't have any way of defending the things that they do believe, because they're so wildly unscientific and wildly unhinged from reality. They deemed Charlie Kirk was worthy of their political violence because he was actually effective at countering their idiocy. Jen Psaki just exposed the idiots. The nurse who went there, the nurse ratted out a doctor who celebrated Charlie Kirk's assassination. That doctor's not worthy of political violence. But you can let the world know who he is, so they can choose to go see another doctor who doesn't celebrate death. I think that's all I have to say on that. I'm going to read this before I bring it up. The armed gardener, I'm not going to bring that. I'd say, those unhinged animals have proven to be unreachable. I think we must decide together how we lawfully, I will not read that word because that's some people are going to say is a dog. How you lawfully respond to them. Here's how you lawfully respond to them. A, prosecute. B, surveil. C, am I on C or 3? C, expose. And not in the doxing sense, show up at their front doors. No, if you have doctors celebrating death, let people, I want to know as a matter of self-preservation. And and expose these motherfuckers, because once people see it, like, oh, shit. You know what I think makes Jose, like, sincerely not on the left? Because he's seeing how fast they'll turn on him too. You're never left enough for the left. Now, it might also be that you're never right enough for the right, but the typical response might be political shunning, but it's not public execution for words. And I say, like, the mere fact that we're having this stream today, how do we bridge the gap? They murdered someone for his words. And I say they, this guy now, and you can go see what the latest of the day is. A lot of people have a lot of tweets to delete from yesterday. Because whether or not he might not have been trans, but it seems that his partner was trans. His partner is now cooperating with the FBI, and I don't think it's out of sincere desire to help or condemnation of what this lunatic is alleged to have done. I think it's out of self-preservation at this point for a number of reasons, which we'll see. I don't want to get too far ahead of my own theories. I forgot what I was just about to say. Oh, yes, them. We you know, when the Minnesota lawmakers were murdered, nobody celebrated it. People did jump to conclusions as to who it was, and appreciate that they're such a bunch of gosh darn liars. Oh, they celebrated the political violence against Nancy Pelosi's husband. The guy that hit Nancy Pelosi's husband in the head with a hammer was a Canadian Green Party card-carrying political member, nudist, lefty wacko. The guy that killed the two Minnesota lawmakers, an act of violence that was unequivocally condemned by everybody, was a Tim Walz appointee to some committee where he had worked with at least one of these people. Whether or not he was he gave sermons in Rwanda or no, it was a French speaking African country. I forget which one now. To say that he's a Republican, he might have been religious. The bottom line is, I doubt very much he was Republican MAGA. Doesn't matter. Even if he was, everyone condemned that. Full-throated, unequivocal. But they try to paint him off as a it's on both sides. Yeah, David DePop, the lefty nudist, a Tim Walz appointee. Who was the other one? So anyways, that's it. I gotta see what's going on here. My wife says there's good matzo ball soup in the fridge. Thanks, Eva. Okay, so we're gonna go. Let me just see what's going on in our Viva Barnes. That looks cool. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. Everyone, come one, come all. You know what that makes me want? I did my Viva pint glass. That's awesome. I did get a new bottle of Please Don't Give In to Palantir Paranoia Viva Fry. I don't know enough about it. I mean, I know some stuff. I don't have an opinion. And that's all I have to say about that. Enjoy your... Oh, there's a UFC fight on. My good. Okay, guys. Let me just see who's winning so far. It's the prelims. And I say, yes, I've gotten into UFC. And I appreciate it's a distraction. And I think we can all use a bit of a distraction. Okay, so I'm right on Gasolon. Oh, darn it. I'm wrong on one. Okay, so I'm right on 2 of 3 so far. I picked Luna over Li Kwang, which he's right. I did pick Ferreira. Maybe I didn't. Did I pick Hernandez? And I picked Kevin Gastelum. So I'm 2 for 3 on the evening right now. And that's it. Okay, go. Thank you all for being here, locals. Thank you. Sorry, it was a short notice, and I've been out of sorts this entire week, and I'm still not in it. So we'll talk about things more tomorrow night. Go forth and enjoy the weekend. Yeah, by the way, the golden pager, I've been forced to reassess. I didn't realize that the golden pager was a gift from February. And I would not take that golden pager as anything but a very overt threat to my well-being. But I'm paranoid. I should do this. I'm neurotic, not paranoid. I'm not paranoid. People are following me. I know it. All right, go. Enjoy the day, guys. Thank you all for being here. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Turn on notifications. And little pimple there. Oh, I said I'd end the stream on something nice. Let's end it on nature. I saw a bobcat today. Did I post that? Oi, here it is. It's amazing. Every time I go biking without my wife, I see the bobcat, or not a bobcat. Today was a double whammy, and she just wants to see the bobcat, a bobcat. Every time I see one, I was not with her. Look at. I didn't just see a bobcat today. Look at this. Cat right there, right there. There, if you can't see it, you'll get a closer look. By the way, it just went off into the woods. Look at that, and it's flipping cub. Come on.
Going closer than that. Holy cows. That's a baby bobcat. Holy
I was going to go whoop it on the nose. I'm joking. I wasn't going to. That's a federal offense of harassing wildlife. Harassing or molesting wildlife. Look at that.
Oh, my goodness.
And I went for a long flipping bike ride. Maybe, I don't know, 20 miles. And I was
scared out.
Look at this. It's in the woods. This is Florida, guys. Like, Florida is continental Australia in America.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, let me just skip ahead because there's a part
where somewhere around here. I'm just gonna.
It starts. Look at that. Okay, and then look at this.
You see it?
It was meowing for its mom.
Meow, meow.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you hear it.
And now it's going to jump into. Look at this. And you could hear the water, just faint water.
Oh, I don't see it now.
Now I can see it walking through the woods.
Okay, it came back up. Oh, is that the mother?
Yeah, that's the mother.
Oh, geez, I heard a voice.
Oh,
It was from the video. Okay. Look at this. Look at that thing. Look at this. And I was making sure that it wasn't going to get hit by a car. It's in a reserve, so people drive slow. It's looking, hey, where's my baby?
I wonder where it's going to go, though.
That's a farm, and then the Everglades. Look at that. How amazing is that? Look at this little thing. Then it gets distracted like me. It's like, oh, what did I just see? Is that a butterfly? Oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? Oh, mom's angry. I better go. Anyhow, that's what I saw that today.
Is that not among the most beautiful things on earth?
Bobcats are usually far more elusive, says one of the people in locals. Yet those definitely have a territory that they occupy there. And I have never seen a baby before, but I see them generally speaking within the same 2 square miles.
Holy cow.
So that's that. All right, I'm going to go watch some fighting with my kid. After all of that, we're going to go watch some UFC, and we'll see who wins the evening. Did we get everything? I think we got everything. Locals, thank you. I will Viva the Animal Whisperer, says Teely 1776. I'm lucky. I'm told they are elusive, and I've seen them on at least 10 occasions, and that was very up close and personal. So rock on, Godspeed, God bless everyone, and I will see 6 o'clock tomorrow. Viva and Barnes, Law for the People, Sunday night law extravaganza. Go forth and hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and prayer has never hurt anybody.